Stephen, we got a decent number. Why don't we kick off and actually start talking about some of the topics that people have raised here and see how we do in the next 40 minutes or so, mow through as much as we can, and then see where we go from there. How does that sound?
I think it sounds fantastic, and appreciate everyone spending some time with us here on a beautiful Friday afternoon, unless it's shitty where you are. And this is meant to be an interactive forum, so definitely raise your hands, ask questions, we'll pull people up. This is meant to be truly collaborative and not just us talking. Something that we wanted to kick off with, that again, if you follow the space and have seen in the trades this week, our friends at Group App and iSpot TV shed light on something that Fred and I have been talking about for many years in the space, and something that we talk about very much at Origin, that all impressions aren't created equal. And on one side of the spectrum, you have people that are on the edge of their seat engaged. On the other side, an impression's running and no one's in the room, or the device is on and the TV is off. And it's the sort of like guise of phantom impressions. And Group M and iSpot, I think, looked at about 20 million impressions across different devices. Obviously, if you understand the technology, it's not really an issue on smart TVs, given the device is one and the same. If the device is off, it can't run impressions. In our view, it's on more kind of older school device. If you think of older models of Roku, where you would plug in the adapter not to the onboard power on the TV, but to an actual AC outlet separate from the TV, you would kind of turn your TV off and turn it back on. And instead of episode 2 of Unsolved Mysteries, you were at episode 200. So your TV's been running for a week. So we're excited as we talk in the space a lot actively around transparency, attention, that people are calling attention, pun intended, I guess, to this, because then folks can come up with solutions and deal with it. So, I mean, it also ties to the broader sense of fraud. And some people have talked about this being fraud. I would argue that it's not potentially intentional, but advertisers don't want to be running in these environments. And then you do have this brewing discussion around ad fraud in the CTV space as a whole, just given the ease of implementing it and that the CPMs are so high.
Yeah, and we wanted to kick off with this because it's taken a long time for somebody as big as this, collaboration between Group M and iSpot to have the courage to bring this to the fore, because it's important and it's actually, I think, quite embarrassing. There are two different buckets of problems that anyone wants to think about. If you're a brand or an agency or a platform out there, about how and where your clients' ads are going to go, or your ads are going to go. It's not just whether people are in the room or not. That is incredibly important. That is one thing. That's what I would call the sort of the active type of passive, whether it's maybe running in the background or in a tire shop and is being classified as CTV, etc. That is one. And then the other one that Stephen called phantom viewing is what we used to call in the industry zombie viewing. And it's really something that you want to make sure, you really want to ask about, to Stephen's point, because there is a chance that it has accounted for up to 20% of all ad spend. And it's important that it took someone big to raise it, because we're definitely at this tipping point of trust, I think, we think in connected TV, or TV, where we need to make sure that we're doing the best job we can for these people, because we are going to tip over into $25 billion of spend next year, if not maybe even this year. And we can't, bring bad practices with us like we did on desktop and mobile. So I slightly disagree with Stephen as to whether it should be called fraud or not. And I was quite vocal about that on LinkedIn yesterday, because there are people who can. There are channels and publishers that can do something about it, as well as the devices, the device manufacturers themselves. And to Stephen's point with OEMs, like I know Catherine Pond called out from Vizio that this can't happen on their TVs. I think that's going to become inventory that becomes a lot more valuable as a result, especially as this storm is weathered and a new standard is met that eliminates this problem from happening.
You mean, yes. So we have a bunch of folks here. We have folks here from the agency side, from the content owner side. Again, don't want to put anyone on the spot, but feel free to raise your hand or drop a question if you'd like to come up on stage and join the conversation. We'd love to hear other people's perspectives. So we'll pause for a second and If no one wants to get up on stage, we can move on to another topic.
Oh, there we go, Stephen. Scott, so okay, so Scott, you're the first. We're going to promote you to panelist and we're going to see how this goes. I was testing this with myself this morning, so I'm going to bring you up and let's see what happens. You may need to change it. Yes, there you go. And you need to unmute yourself as well. Sorry, Scott.
Oh, all good, But I'm putting a caveat considering how my computer has been working today. If it goes crazy and the kids walk in because it's lunchtime, I apologize in advance.
That's what this is about. So, don't worry, this ain't a webinar.
You know, I mean, I saw your LinkedIn post earlier in the week, and I mean, in my prior involvement, and Stephen knows this when I was over at Equifax, this was one of the kind of, let's call it identity conversations we consistently had across the board. You know, if you look at the platforms, if you look at the agencies, if you look at the logo, and you know, you brought up a very good point. If you look at the aspect of, is it always on? Who's in the room? Is it truly somebody in the room? And it's like the secret sauce that kind of all the parties engaged in the situation want. The platforms want to know if it's the wife watching versus the kids versus the husband. It's very difficult to do that because how do you tie it back to the phone? And I think, Stephen, when you and I were first starting talking about this is even prior to GDPR and CCPA and all those type of new rules that came into play. So it's a very difficult item to kind of put in place. I mean, that's the question I think everybody would ask. Okay, we want it, but how do we do it without upsetting the consumer?
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're right. And I think it's just going to be a little bit of a baby step thing. But the first thing that's needed to happen is for the awareness of its existence to stop being brushed under the rug, which has now happened, you know, and it is an embarrassing event in my mind that it has been allowed to happen all these years. You know, so I think the first is just the acknowledgement, and we can work on from there, but it is going to be a collaboration of effort between the device manufacturers and the channel owners, you know, and then maybe some kind of change in the experience with the consumers, whether it's just a channel or a device asking if you're still watching or something like that, that I think could handle definitely the zombie viewing. But as far as the passive viewing is concerned, someone who leaves the room or, you know, or just sort of has gone out for a drink and left it on, it's sort of different thing, you know, that's a different matter. And I think they need to be approached and solved separately, you know, and like, we do love working with people that help address this, you know, and we're not here on this call to plug or to pitch or to do anything like that. But there are some really fantastic solutions out there that, you know, are really, really helping address this problem. So I think that there's better times to come, and I don't think it's a moment too soon.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point when you start bringing in the manufacturers to engage in this whole scenario. You now have, like, I won't say the names of the manufacturers to keep it kind of, you know, equal, but you know, now you have televisions that if you're not watching it after a certain time, it doesn't go to a screensaver. Now it's like it becomes a piece of art on the wall. And you know, is the unit truly off, or is it still on? What's the background of the, you know, are things running? What's the measurement application that comes into play? I mean, I'm sure if you have a different conversation with, like, you know, TV Squared and Media Melon and those guys that are doing the viewership measurement versus what Samsung, well, there I go saying the names of manufacturers, but you know what I mean. I mean, where do you draw the line? Is it, you know, now do you pull in a second screen application where maybe it's pulling off of, you know, the mobile devices in the room, and there's an IMEI number that gets passed through to see if there's truly a geo-fencing type of application that's in a close proximity that can be applicable?
Interesting. Yeah, well, actually, we're going to be going on to measurement in a minute. without it being the typical measurement conversation. So we may have to bring you back up, I think, for that, because I think what you're saying will dovetail into what we're going to talk about in a couple of topics time. But thank you, Scott, for
you're welcome, guys.
for coming on up. I think that was valuable. And now what I'll do before we move on is I'm now going to, thank you. Elizabeth, we actually want to go on to your topic next. Would you like to join us, or do you want to stay quietly in the distance? All you got to do is raise your hand if you do want to join.
She commented, so I just upgraded her to analyst for a nominal fee.
For a nominal fee of $5. Excellent. And this is really, really, really interesting.
Okay.
Hi. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for agreeing to participate in what probably is for some people a very surreal event, because what is it? It's just us all chatting. We loved your question. It was definitely the longest and most detailed, which definitely caught our eye. So thank you for that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of read through a bit of it, and then I'm actually going to let you and Stephen riff on this and see if other people do. But just so people know here, the question that Elizabeth came up with was based around the fragmentation of the market and the historical view and reality of bundles, right? The great unbundling, and hang on, there we go. The reality of how consumers actually watch TV, where they watch it, the challenge of metrics, and how to make meaning from those metrics, and the marketing efforts to consumers, the complete market saturation, making companies figure out new ways to reach people. And then she finishes, I think that might be all LOL. So let's discuss. Stephen, I think this is strongly in your wheelhouse.
I mean, it's interesting. I love this question because I think of it as a consumer, and I think of it as someone in the space. And I was talking to a friend about this last night, that everyone was like, thank God I can cut the cord. I can get YouTube TV. I can get Sling TV. I'm going to save all this money. I can unbundle everything. And then, my gosh, bundling sounds kind of good now as a consumer, right? Like my YouTube TV that was $35 is now $70. So I'm not really saving any money on that. And then one kid needs Netflix, one kid needs Hulu. I have all these 12 disparate sort of solutions, and I don't know what's on each. So I think it's interesting. There was this 2-3 years ago concept of unbundling, and now I hear a lot of consumers rebundling. And I think when you talk about bundles in silos, and I'll throw to you on this, Elizabeth, part of the challenge is, and it's a big challenge on CTV, is content discovery. Me and my wife spend 15 minutes a night finding out is it in Tubi? Is it in Pluto? Is it here? And like a lot of the platforms are incentivized to allow sort of that talking back and forth. So I mean, from a consumer standpoint, I hear a lot around rebundling. So I'm curious if you're hearing something similar, and where you think bundles kind of exist now and in the future.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a great topic and something that we cover at in our research. So we survey 10,000 internet households every quarter, and that's where our data set's coming from. Some of our recent research that we've done in this area shows that 40% of OTT subscribers are coming through a home service provider, the broadband provider. So how consumers are getting their services now is different than what it was a few years ago. And I think that it's a really, it's a huge point if you consider there's almost 400 services in North America and 300 of those coming in the US market, that, the direct to consumer model can probably only go so far. And consumers are used to doing things a certain way. And so the bundle, I mean, if you just look at subscription services in any market, it's always about a bundle, and the NPS scores go right there with it. So I think it's complicated though. I mean, it sounds all easy. You'll just bundle it all back up and resell it. And here we are. But of course, it's not that easy when you have so many players. And then you have some of the traditional players doing new things, right? Because they're after the data. I mean, everybody's after the data.
That's the problem. And like, there's been this, like Connected TV was our chance to create a truly democratic marketplace, right? And, both for media owners and indeed for advertisers, a nice, simple, friendly, honest place. And obviously it became the Wild West very quickly. And, and that's something that, like the purpose of this Q&A, right, is to try and make it less Wild Westy for people, because there's a lot of like that kind of fragmentation and misinformation, but there's also now become this sort of very land grabby kind of mentality. You're right, where like people are now trying to protect their own dominions and, and like their own data sets or whatever it is. And they don't want people moving away to other things because you got, in the old days, you just had a bunch of channels, but now you've got channels within apps, within services, within platforms, and people want you to stay in one place, but that doesn't work for the experience. What Stephen said, like, my wife will say like, oh, let's watch this. And while she's opening the wine, I'll still be looking for where the fuck it was that we were watching it. And like, we watch our TV through a smart TV, but with an Apple TV attached to it, because I have a problem with Samsung's UI, right? Like it doesn't work for me. And I think a lot of OEMs have been really slow on the uptake and it's maybe too late for them. But Apple TV does allow you to search across multiple services, but not all of them. So it's kind of like a crapshoot, right? And I think that this, again, like people talk a lot about, people in our industry always talk a lot about customer first, experience first. But like to a vast extent, that's absolute bullshit. And I think that that's really what you're highlighting, right? Like we've all got really good spin, but the truth is that like, what's good for our company isn't necessarily like good for the, good for the shareholders. And that's a problem.
Of course, it's always about the money, right? I mean, that's what business is always about. But when the money comes and how much has to be invested now and how long it takes to get the money back, right, is also big questions when you're talking about the big companies who can invest without making money and in fact, lose money for years or perhaps a decade before they start making money. I mean, that's an odd thing to consider there. But, consumers also want a single bill. We have very solid data that they just want one bill. So, yeah, I think it's a really dynamic market. It's super exciting to, do the research and of course, watch companies like y'all and all the others, really think outside the box. But also, I think it's important to look historically. It's always important to look at what's already happened.
Sure. History does want to repeat itself to an extent. We're not trying to reinvent the universe, but you're right, and thank you. Hello, Gary. I think you have something to share here.
I may. So it's an interesting, the topic is great. It's a crazy, crazy thing. While the industry has now tried to, or intended to, like you said, Fred, give more choices and not have it become the Wild Wild West. Here's the problem. Yesterday, I tell a friend of mine, you have to watch The Offer on Paramount Plus. It's just an incredible, incredible series if you love The Godfather. She says to me, but I don't want to add any more services. I already have 5. And therein really lies the problem. The problem is you have so many great choices now because everybody, I'm about to put Hulu on today because I want to see, the new movies that are on today that I just saw promoted. Do I want to have Hulu indefinitely? No. So the solution to all this doesn't exist yet, but yeah. Somebody has to come in, and it's not a Sling, it's not a Plex, it's not these bundlers, it's not YouTube at $65. It's somebody who creates a system that in a crazy way is like what pay cable was, yeah, because it was able to aggregate, but you want to be able, there's got to be a discount for being able to add a half a dozen services. Because if you're going to spend $7.99 and you're going to put 8 services on because you got kids, wives, friends, husbands, brothers, you know.
Yeah, you're right. And I got 2 thoughts there. Thank you, Gary. One, this is the first time in 10 years I think I've seen you wearing a t-shirt. So that's means it's hot in Philly today.
I just
2,
walked 2 miles in 94,
yeah.
degree weather. So yeah.
Jesus. And the second thing is, you're right. And I think, Elizabeth, that speaks to what you're saying, right? Like, maybe there was a framework that existed before that we will end up needing to find a way to revert to. But in my opinion, that's just not going to happen anytime soon. I think what I'm going to do is I keeping an eye on the time. There are a couple more interesting topics. So I'm going to say thank you to each of you. Does anybody have any, do either of you have any more to raise before I demote you to attendee? Thank you. Gary and Elizabeth, you're an absolute star. Thank you for the question. Really do appreciate it.
Something to add really quick that I don't know if anyone saw that I thought was interesting, because it kind of reminds me of the heyday, right? When you would have a cable subscription and you would call and add HBO, the show would end, you'd call and sort of like, hey, cancel my HBO subscription. And people do that now with the sort of like the packages. Something that I saw Fubo offer, which I thought was really interesting, is because you have your Fubo subscription, you can add in packages. I think what they were doing is they're saying, okay, you have your soccer package, like soccer has ended for the season. Do you want to remove this? And again, they don't have an incentive to do it from a revenue standpoint, right? But they do potentially from a churn and sort of customer retention standpoint. And I thought that was a unique approach, because most places, when you pay the money, don't want you to ever cancel and want you to keep paying when you're not using something. So I think that was an interesting approach. And I will say, Fred, your camera is like just a little blurry. So I'm not sure if that means you agree with me or disagree with me.
It was the agreement blur. Like,
agreement blur.
And by the way, guys, like this is pretty much most of each of our day when we're on video.
Yeah, we just stay on the line all day long and try to blur and unblur, and then we'll do like a few minutes of work, and we have an absolute blast.
Well, you do
Sometimes.
a few minutes of work, and I just
Yeah.
look at new webcams that work. But that is next week's topic. Will be webcams that work. We're expecting that one to go equally viral. Stephen, I was suggesting to you earlier, and you were typically ignoring me on Slack, that we might actually move on to number 4, because this can be a really interesting, quite hot topic. And again, I don't want this to become salesy or pitchy, Stephen, so we're going to have to be careful. But this is a really, really big topic right now, which should be interesting to a lot of you, which is a question from Jeff. And he's a media consultant. And his question was, effective, validated, and transparent measurement on connected TV. Boy, what a topic. I'm going to start by saying one thing, and then I'm going to let Stephen like either agree in public, disagree in public, or neither in public. But like something that we picked up not that long ago was that we think there's been a bit of a mismatch between KPIs and measurement. You know, we actually divide the two into church and state. KPIs are just simply what are the performance indicators? Now, obviously, outcomes and people buying stuff is a performance indicator. But what we've done is we've actually separated them and said KPIs can really sit towards all the things that are incredibly boring but very important. You know, the completion rate, the cost per viewable complete, viewability, which we still see in a lot of CTV RFPs. And then for measurement, we then talk about the actual success, awareness and consideration, participation, outcomes, and so on. But Stephen, like, I mean, you know, you run the ops side of this business and make sure that our clients like get more than they would expect as standard, and then even more because, you know, we're awesome. But like, how are you seeing legitimately like what the next generation of measurement should be, you know, on connected TV? Like my thought is it just a bundling of brand studies and, you know, attention measurement and other things, or what do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, I'll try not to make this too much kind of hashtag shameless plug, but we are on the recipient end of a lot of RFPs, and still traditionally from agency and brand partners, a lot of them are like, our KPI is completion rate. And we're like, that's great, we'll get you a completion rate, but like, that's not good enough on CTV, we're gonna get you a lot more. So I think there are interesting companies, disclaimer, we work with them, T-Vision, that has a panel and is looking at attention. So again, Are all impressions created equal? Are eyeballs on the screen? Are they not? There's a few other companies in that space. I think when you kind of zoom out and look at measurement as a whole on CTV, there have been a number of studies and research over the past year or two around why have a lot of viewership has moved from traditional television to CTV, but only a very small portion of the dollars have followed. And why is that? And the top answer that is always cited is measurement. So again, if you're a traditional broadcast cable buyer, are you still transacting in gross rating points? How do you transcribe that to an impression? That's challenging. I think on the traditional side, some folks are moving to impressions. You have that parity. And again, if I'm a traditional broadcast cable buyer and I'm buying on Nielsen, I mean, frankly, like Nielsen's product set for CTV and OTT measurement is a little shit, in my opinion. Feel free to quote me on that.
Sorry, delayed.
Freddie's camera's not blurry, so he must agree with me. Or not, I forget what the one was. Something that's exciting, broader kind of measurement across the ecosystem. And I think when you think of evolution, you have to think broader measurement. NBC came out earlier this week and said that 40% of their upfront guarantees were not against traditional Nielsen agent demo. They were against non-traditional kind of currencies. Magnite came out yesterday, the day before. They've integrated with a lot of companies for sort of non-traditional currencies. So again, I don't want to sort of, I hope no one from Nielsen is here or is streaming this their office, but I mean, I think Nielsen's a really interesting use case this year when you think of measurement, that maybe they took their position in the space for granted. They lost their MRC accreditation, that got paused. And it came, I mean, this great opportunity came in for people like VideoAmp and iSpot TV and all these other measurement companies. Yeah. So even though a lot of what I'm talking about is for traditional measurement, I think where there's innovation there, it's going to fall to CTV. So a lot of these companies are digital first measurement companies who have figured out CTV and are bringing that expertise to traditional TV. Fred has a question. I would upgrade him to a panelist, but he's already here and unblurred and ready to
I'm like turbo panel. Well, actually that allows us to, I want to kind of like dovetail in the question that we skipped, but go back to it, like how linear and CTV work synergistically. This is Amy from advertising. Everyone is very defensive about one or the other. Do you think that what you've just described is actually a part of like why that is?
I mean, I think to some extent, it might be people kind of holding on to traditional turf and wanting dollars in a traditional bucket versus a new bucket. I mean, I think, and maybe this is a good opportunity for some of our kind of agency friends or people that are working with advertisers to come on stage. But I think part of the challenge there is if I'm advertising, if I'm an advertiser, I'm running on traditional media and CTV, is that a duplicated audience or what is a unique reach? I think that's really important and a question more people need to ask to make sure they're being super efficient with their dollars and their spend.
100%. Genevieve, I think I just invited you. I don't know if your video is on, but I think you're here.
I am here. Hi. I can kind of speak from an agency perspective because I thought something you said earlier was interesting in terms of why dollars have not shifted from the traditional networks over to CTV. And the reason why is because upfronts. Right. These are negotiated well in advance of the fiscal year. Yeah. And unfortunately, when you're trying to meet those minimums, it does not allow for you to be expanding beyond that into CTV space. And the other concern is, are we duplicating our efforts? If I'm buying directly with NBCU, am I duplicating efforts by partnering with a CTV partner that has inventory across everything? Obviously, especially with Origin and other partners, we can exclude, anyone we're already running with. But then the question is, are we expanding our reach enough to justify another partner on the plan, et cetera? So what's happening is we already have negotiations set, and we are subject to those beyond my level at the agency. And then beyond that, making the case for these additional partners or additional, types of media is just a much harder sell through than another digital partner or another avenue that they don't have an upfront or dollars already kind of earmarked for that. So that's my 2 cents.
I mean, that was like 10 cents worth, but like that
Yeah.
was such an amazing perspective. And you mean, given you're on one side, we're on the other, I mean, it is challenging as a new partner and someone trying to do innovation. How do you break in where existing partners are doing more, trying to get more of the market share? And like, to your point, I mean, where some people benefit greatly from being part of the upfront process, it leaves other folks out. And I think hopefully, I mean, given the post-pandemic world we live in, that model is changing. But I mean, I think, I mean, you're in the middle of all of it. So I think your insights are super valuable and I appreciate you sharing them.
Totally. I think the key would be finding partners that don't already have these. Like if you're trying to break into the space or make it onto plans, the plans that will be the lowest hanging fruit, which is a very popular term in this industry, is going to be advertisers that maybe aren't spending a lot of money on traditional television. And the argument is, hey, you're not spending on traditional television, likely because it's expensive. Here is an alternative that actually marries traditional TV with digital targeting. So you're getting the best of both worlds. And if they're really forward thinking and they can make it happen, you can actually extend the CTV beyond the television screen and across your digital plan. So that's like the easiest way. And then the harder way is how you can prove to those who have to spend these dollars with the networks, where does CTV fit into that, and why is it necessary? Because that's the argument you have to make to the traditional TV buyers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And as a good, Genevieve, thank you so much. I mean, for anyone who caught that, and this is being recorded. We're on a recorded line for health and safety purposes, but like that was really pure gold. Getting in a perspective like that from the agency side is incredibly rare. So Genevieve, thank you so much for that. I value that, and that's what this is all about. Is there anything else you want to share before we relegate you back to the depths and the pits of the mosh pit?
Oh, no, that's it. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your Friday.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. The next topic, Stephen, I'm loving this. We should have made this like 9 hours long, even if no one was here. I was thinking maybe could we talk a bit again, making sure we don't plug, about what Adrian from Windstar asked about, boring CTV spots, boring and repetitive spots, because I think that like, while there's a very like normal answer to that, I think there's a far more out there and kind of risky answer as well that could be quite fun for people as we go through this Q&A. Adrian, do you want to join, or do you just want to watch us chat about it? It's entirely up to you, or you can decide halfway through. Just raise your hand.
I'll start talking if she wants to join. I'd love to talk to
her.
Go for it. Amazing. I mean, I feel like that was a bit of a softball, because everything we do is to solve for that. Because the sort of the comparison I make is that some advertisers are either allergic to frequency capping, or there are 10 people between the advertiser and the publisher, and people in the middle aren't incentivized to enforce frequency capping. So I'm in a little small farm town with my Christmas decorations in Connecticut. I see the same ad, from X advertiser 20 times a day for 5 weeks. After seeing that same ad 5 times, I've completely sort of tuned out. So it's interesting to me that I'm a big advertiser on CTV. I spend $10 million. I built my ad for $2 million. I have one version and I run it for like 2 months. That just seems insane. And again, hashtag shameless plug, where we came in and can kind of add our toppers and technology to personalize it. You see the results. But again, the fact that people are spending so much money, but not like, okay, I got to frequency cap it, or creative versioning, just like what? Well,
so like, I mean, honestly, so the thought I have is far less sort of pluggy, right? Which is, why does anybody there are a lot of really shitty practices that we've brought into connected TV, right? It's anyone who's been to the homepage of our website will see how unapologetic we are. But like, this is a 70-year-old format for a start. The idea of breaking up someone's movie, and bunging a bunch of ads end to end and then letting them have their movie back, right, has been happening for over 7 decades. And that's unforgivable enough, I think. But the idea that like someone can only have like an ad and they've somehow got to make that appeal to every different audience, you know, is mind-bendingly ridiculous. And, you know, and in the old days, that was how it was, but that doesn't mean it has to be how it is. You know, your ad creative we've actually proven that it doesn't need to be a multi-million-dollar, you know, sort of production, right? Like, you know, animation does the job, but, and, you know, and if it's animated, that gives you the chance to tell 10 different stories, 50 different stories, 100 different stories, and to really make the core message itself something that's a lot more relevant. Because something that I've been on my soapbox about before, and I really want to make sure that people do like think on this, is there's a big fucking difference between something being personal and something being relevant. Because you've targeted the right viewer, that doesn't make it personal, right? That just makes it decent, smart spending of your money. But personal is the message itself. And there's nothing about the power that underpins connected TV that shouldn't allow you to really fundamentally send out a different ad to pretty much every different audience. We're there, you know, and like, it's why we bang on about creative technology, right? And maybe, Stephen, I think this could play into a couple more questions as we slowly come up on time. And I see if you can bring Scott into the equation while I finish chatting, that would be great. Like, you know, oh dear, now I've forgotten what I was going to say, but it was going to be amazing. No, it's gone, but it was going to be a really cool thought. So I'll just shut up now. But
Jeez.
Scott might have an opinion. Hello, Scott.
Yeah, Scott, what was Freddie going to say, Scott?
God damn it.
You know, you've gone full circle here, Fred, in the sense of, you know, there's couple post, you know, the statistics out there. People will watch advertising if it's relevant to them in their given moment at life at that particular moment. But how do we make it relevant to them at their given point in life? If you can't get some form of identity or tie back to what they're doing, what they're using, what they're engaged with. So it's a vicious circle that comes into play. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that's the big question: is how do you solve the answer or provide an answer for both sides of the coin?
Yeah, you're right. And like, and now what you've actually said reminded me of what I was going to say somehow, which was, and then Stephen, yes, I'll let you then take over straight after this for last minute. But there's a lot of technology that exists, what I say, behind the glass, right? That allows, you know, you to find the right household. But what has been lacking up until now is technology that goes in front of the glass that actually affects what they physically see, the experience that they get, because those are two very, very distinct things. And they weren't both available, you know, in the traditional days, but they are now. And it's just a case of having the imagination to try and bring that out, and then to fight the dinosaurs, as I call them, of Madison Avenue, to be like, guys, I know you don't understand how this works, but this is the future. Let's make this happen. Like 10 seconds from you, and then I'm gonna, then Stephen's got to go.
No, you know, I'm good in the sense of just, I mean, there is technology that's coming in to answer those type of questions. You know, and Stephen, I know we're talking next week, so you and I can offboard and go into that type of stuff. But yeah, you bring up a very good point, right? Great topic.
Yeah.
Can't wait. So Scott, I'm going to butcher really quick and bring our good friend Jason up to the stage.
See you, bud.
He is a consultant in the political space. And I think as a consumer and as someone in the business, I'm always curious because there are more and more political ads every day. Historically, some of our friends in the political space have been a bit immune to frequency capping. So I'd love to hear from you, Jason, for a minute or two. I mean, as you talk to political agencies, we know a lot more money's moving from traditional to CTV. Like the folks you're working with, agencies, candidates, like what is getting them excited this cycle in the space?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. I mean, I think, you know, everyone's excited about CTV. We're seeing a lot more CTV on plans. Some buyers that we're talking to taking online video, they're very skeptical about online video and its effectiveness at this point, and focusing on CTV because of its, you know, completion rates and, you know, viewability. There is concern about about fraud, you know, all the issues that have come out recently. They're all concerned and want to tap into the most direct inventory and make sure that they can be most effective with their budgets. Engagement's coming up a lot. They're trying to figure out the best ways and resources that they can engage with the voter, because every vote counts. Some of these elections are so close, nowadays, where they can be off by 500 votes, and you need to reach that voter, and you need to make sure that their eyeballs are on their screen so they can see the messaging, and then vote for the candidate. Yeah. And then last thing, is measurement that they're all looking for, like, new ways to measure their campaign so they can justify it to the campaign managers and really, push more budgets, steer more budgets away from Facebook and Google and all the TV and radio and all the traditional linear, budgets, which, the campaign managers a lot of times still steer the money towards, because it works. I mean, they have research and studies that show that, bombing the television waves, 2 weeks before election helps persuade voters. So they continue to do so. But, adding CTV into the mix is going to be extremely important for this midterms and then looking ahead at the 2024 presidential elections. Yeah,
100%. So very quickly, and Jason, stay there. Like, I know we're over, so if people do have to drop off, thank you, but I'd love to talk for 1 or 2 more minutes. Stephen, I'm checking our diary, and typically you have nothing on and I have nothing on, so we should be good.
To do. But I know, Jason, you have to go pick up your son at camp. So you have to go.
Okay, in that case, a 30-second question. A 30-second question for you, Jason, is I heard some sort of rumor or urban legend on the grapevine that, like, social is actually becoming a lot less effective or a lot less cost effective than it was even just a year ago. I don't need, like, I'm just curious, was I dreaming that, or actually, like, is it beginning to become less of a I spend $1 and get $1.20 back in products or votes or whatever, like environment?
Yeah, I think for sure, the targeting capabilities are all changing, where they can, all the, big social media giants are changing the ways that the buyers are traditionally targeting, that were extremely effective, and the costs are going up to reach that, therefore, to reach that voter. So they're also looking for new ways to both fundraise, which is the big part of the campaign, and then that leads into getting out the vote messaging.
Right.
Well, thank you for joining us on stage, and talk soon, and enjoy the hot as hell weekend on the weather.
Thanks, guys.
East Coast, and
thanks, dude,
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank Jason. So, and for the other folks who are here, hang on, Stephen, have you booted Jason out? What do you? Oh, there we go.
I can still hear you.
If everybody would like to go, like, does anybody just raise your hand if you want to stick around and listen to us garble for another couple of minutes? Otherwise, we'll. Oh, Scott said yes. Ben, okay, cool, okay, excellent. In that case, Elizabeth, and I saw your LinkedIn.
That's interesting for the people who work for us who are in here. They're not. Hands. They
hopefully that's because they're working.
Shut down that.
All right, I love it. I love it. Okay, hang on. I was going to get myself a beer as well.
After you get one for yourself, you have to get one for everyone.
Oh, okay, fine, fair enough. So, like, I do want us to kind of raise 1 or 2 more questions. Let's see, someone just asked a question. Oh, that's great. Stephen, where do you want to go next? Do you want to throw out a couple of things, or is there another one? We did list a couple more that we wanted to go through, but I'm just so excited by the fact that people want to stick around that I can't think.
Gosh, I don't know. We talked about fragmentation. We talked around measurements. Oh, hold on. What about sports and live? Do you want to take that one, Fred?
Sports and live.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, attribution. There we go. Okay, Ben. Okay. Right. That's it, Ben. We're gonna. Do you want to come on up as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
And Genevieve is waving goodbye, I think. All right. Well, you know what? We're gonna bring you in, Ben. And if you didn't want to, then I guess tough, maybe. Oh, he declined. Oh no, he can't. Okay, fine. Fair enough. All right. Attribution. Oh, shitty internet. Got it. Stephen, you kick off with this one because, Jesus, I mean, I hear the word attribution kicked around a lot And I think it's often misused, potentially by me as well. So let's do some air clearing.
So, I mean, I think when we think of attribution on CTV, there's a few different things, right? And like, if you think of CTV a year, 3 years ago, frankly, it was primarily an upper funnel awareness play. And then we got it to a middle funnel consideration plan. And people have been really keen, especially in COVID days, a lot of performance marketers who were very keen on desktop and mobile are finally trying CTV. The thing that has sort of limited their ability to sort of move more dollars is if they spend $1 on CTV advertising, they need to sell $2 in shoes. So I think people, and we play into this a lot, is our QR codes, are they a way to get people to transact? Something that's kind of exciting, hot off the headlines, is Walmart and Roku announced a really big partnership last night. Again, around shoppable CTV, T-commerce, they call it. We need another cool name, cool. And basically, you'll be able to see an ad on screen, full screen, for a product at Walmart. Walmart will be the advertiser initially. Other brands will be able to use it sort of later this year, that you can see something, hit a button and buy it. I think the thing that's interesting to me about that is initially it's only going to support Roku Pay, which makes sense. It's on Roku. Something that Fred mentioned, and you're smiling like crazy and not blurry, is something to throw to you, is, to me, that's interesting. And where Fred said, well, what if you could say, this person, like, how many people leave something in their car? Like, cart abandonment's a big issue. What if I see an ad for something that's in my cart and now it's 20% off, right? Like, to me, that's really the value around T-commerce.
And this excites the shit out of me. Like, so again, if anyone, I have very occasionally written on LinkedIn, and one of those rare occasions was this morning when I read this last night. I read this last night. Fucking hell. I read this last night, and am I still blur? You're just hazing me now.
No. You were blurry when I started doing that. My defense.
So you managed to unblur my cap. That's like, you're like
new Zoom feature. You have to have
this is like the Ring. Well, that caused someone to leave. Well done, Stephen. And come on. It really excited me because, as anyone who might know me knows, I'm a massive skeptic about what you should actually expect someone who's like literally leaning back, drinking gin, eating crisps, watching TV to do, right? Like, we have forgotten so much that that's the environment that they're typically watching TV in, on the basis that they're in the room and not a zombie viewer, right? And so to expect them to do anything is a really tall order, and it has to be part of a value exchange. There's no question about that. Not only does it need to be part of a value exchange, it needs to be logical, it needs to have a really strong incentive behind it, and it needs to be easy, right? Like, it needs to be really, really easy. And I think that, you know, that incentive and that desire could be hit between Roku and Walmart if Walmart's able to, they're able to create these assets that are effectively, they could even be kind of like static, frankly, that are like, you know, Stephen has evergreen Christmas decorations in his Walmart basket and a candle that he's not allowed to light because his wife will punch him in his basket, and he has done for 2 days. Like, click the button and it will be delivered tomorrow. I mean, I've got a feeling, and I know there's no one from Amazon here right now, that like, when I lived in Seattle back in my old days, and I was talking to a lot of the Amazon folks, like at their day one HQ, it was like, I think this was a dream that they had about people on Fire TV. You push it in your Amazon basket or save for later, and they use a bunch of their unsold Fire TV inventory to remind you that it's in your basket. You know, I was quoted in a thing the other day saying that like, there is legitimately a future for TV that is e-commerce. There's no doubt about it. And I think this is a quantum leap as long as it's done right, but it's going to require the right data to make sure. It's going to require the right payment structure. It's going to require, it's going to require a lot of things, including then again, like the right creative to be there, and, you know, a flash sale or whatever it is. But yeah, I think this is going to be really big. But also something that Stephen said that anybody again who's talked to us will know, putting aside the Walmart and Roku thing, which I still think is fucking brilliant, QR, right? Like, the jury is still so out with QR. you know, don't necessarily think that, yes, it was all through the pandemic, and yes, everyone now advertises, and anybody who's seen me post on LinkedIn, I call out the villains for doing it badly, or I support the brands who are probably being ripped off. Like, it is being done badly, but if you imagine that it's also done really, really well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work, because you've got about 8 different factors that all of which need to apply. And there's a massive conflict between them. And Ben, I think you're almost right when you're saying that, when you can pause your show, of course, but it still needs to be the right shape and size, etc. But like, again, if you're asking part of the ADD generation, the entitled ADD generation, to pause their show, you're really asking them to do a lot. So they've got to have a real hell of an incentive to do that. And that's unlikely, I think, to happen so much in the show than it is in an ad break if you're being sold something that you know you really, really want. But there is a sweet spot. It's 15 seconds is like 10 to 15 seconds is the minimum for someone to go through the mental, emotional, and physical process of being able to establish what's on the screen and whether they want to click on it. And you're right, it is like all about size, position, duration, the quiet space around it, Scott. Like, all of these are massive, massive considerations, and they don't play easily into one another. But we still sense a future for it. And every time we run a campaign that includes QR, which is becoming increasingly frequent, we tell our clients very simply, we're going to give you this QR element. We don't know if it's going to work. It's still, you know, something that is a work in progress, but there is a future, and the desire is a big, big piece of it, right, Stephen? And I think that's what Walmart could do, not through QR, but with the right data and remote. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Scott and other people have said this, and you mean we have some commentary in the space around this. I mean, we had that flash in the pan moment in the Super Bowl, right, where there was a freaking QR code scanning across the screen. It broke websites, and flames were shooting up, and it was amazing. And like, the problem is, as a result of that, people threw up QR codes over everything. And to Fred's point, I think a few folks in the chat were saying this. I mean, I always watch CTV, so I watch Unsolved Mysteries all day long, watch the ad breaks, and then I'm going to tell you everything about me here. And then I'm trying to scan QR codes. Sometimes, like, not to go on a tangent, about 60% of ads that render on CTV look like shit. The quality is shit. If it doesn't render right, you can't even scan the QR code. And then it's like playing whack-a-mole with the QR code. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And then it just goes to the website. There's no, I mean, think of QR codes. That's bullshit. When you think of DR advertising, call now, get one free, call now, get free shipping, call now, do this. Like, to me as a consumer, I'll just go to the website tomorrow and then I forget about it. Who cares? Like, okay, there's a trivia question. Like, there has to be a value exchange for QR. The problem is like that like 60, 70% of ads sometimes on CTV have QR codes. Half of them, you can't even scan them. And the other half, there's no value prop. So I think, Ben, you said it, QR codes aren't going away. People haven't cracked the code. And unfortunately, with a lot of brands and agencies we work with, they're not willing to crack the code. They're sticking with the status quo, linking it to our website. Who cares? So that's my rant on the QR.
Yeah, like Genevieve, you nailed it. You know, like you are right. QRs are as close as they can get to making TV shoppable right now. It is like, the way to look at QR is as a portal. It's just a portal, nothing more. But what do you need to do to persuade someone to turn that handle and actually go through that portal, right? Like, it's so much more complex than I think most people have given it thought to. And I say that because I've given it a shitload of thought. I'm obsessed with it. Absolutely obsessed. Like, we've had them, you know, and again, I mean, hey, maybe this is about as salesy as I'm going to get. Like, I've presented to a lot of clients some incredibly bold ideas about how to make QR addictive in a TV environment, and no one's been brave enough to execute it with us. So like, you know, if you're out there and you want to try something that we will underwrite that could either massively fail or completely fucking blow the doors off it, and at least give us a bunch of data, hit me up, because I am obsessed with it. And Genevieve, the advertisers deserve, because the great thing about QR is that directness between the consumer and you, the brand. There's no Google getting in the way to sell you, you know, like if you just go to a URL or you Google the name of a brand, there's no sponsored ad that can get in the way. No one else is getting your data. You know, it's between you, QR vendor, the origins of this world, and the brand. And there's so much more that you can gain from it. Like it's, yeah, there's a lot of more additional information they can get. And you can also make people dwell in the right experience. If you use them correctly. And to Stephen's point, like don't just send them to the home page or to a product page. You know, like there are about 15 different things that you can do. You can have a QR, put a calendar invite in someone's phone for the next show, you know, or for a sale that's going to turn up at 10 o'clock tonight. There are some very creative things to do, and you wouldn't have to spend a lot to make people want to do it. Like Guinness did this thing last year, right, where on St. Patrick's Day in the run-up, where it was, and this wasn't QR and connected TV, this was an audio experience where it was engaged with this ad and you get a coupon for a free pint of Guinness. They must have got rid of the all of the Guinness in the first minute. Eric, thank you. I will drop a note to you. I know you got to go. Okay. I mean, that puts us at an hour. Stephen, I mean, there is so much more. We've got a handful of people, but I'm just going to say, I think we'll call it here. We've got many, many more questions. We have about 50 questions, but we didn't want to rush through them. And Mrs. Strong, I think, wants to participate potentially. Guys, if we didn't get around to your question or you want to be involved, we're going to do this again, Stephen, I think. Like it was easy and enjoyable, honestly. I'll email all of you afterwards. Hit me up, hit us up, let us know. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to say thank you for being here, for tolerating us, for listening to us. This is about really trying to bring some honesty to this industry, okay? And for people to ask any questions they want and get a legitimate and honest answer. So thank you. And Stephen, over to you for the final words.
This was so much fun, and appreciate everyone joining and interacting. And I mean, I think we're going to do this again soon, because again, in a world where we still aren't doing tons of in-person things, stuff like this is important. So thanks everyone for your time, and have an amazing, amazing weekend.
Yeah, take care, everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.